Greetings YouTube, welcome back to the Metanerd channel. I am Marcus, bringing you another video for Cardfight Vanguard Overdress. In this video, we will be going through the overall build option for Magnolia, the ice cream fox, as well as its other ice cream pals. As an overall, Magnolia focuses on multi-attacking rearguards where he can attack up to 6 times, including the Vanguard attack, since he is able to give your back row rearguards to attack from the back row. However, it is not only solely focusing on attack, he can also be very flexible in terms of attacking as well as boosting if your back row is all grade 1, that is. Because if your opponent does get a damage trigger, most of your attack are gonna get shut down or be a little less effective. But even if your opponent does get a damage trigger, you still can decide to boost with those rearguards that you gave the power boost to, since each rearguard will be given a 5k power. Magnolia also does rely a little bit on personal riding for the full effect, since if you do not personal riding, the maximum number of attack you're gonna get is 4 times. If you do personal ride, Magnolia will be able to attack for 6 times. This deck has a relatively high skill ceiling because, as you know, if your opponent does get a lot of damage trigger, your offensive turn will be a little bit on the weaker side. Also, the attack pattern for this deck will be quite challenging because you have to determine which attack you will want to attack to get the maximum amount of value out of your personal riding turn. Resource management in this deck is a little bit high because you don't really get a lot of resources back. You don't really get soul charge back, you don't really get counter charge back. So each and every resources that you spend must be taken into account because you're not getting them back. Now, as for the ride deck, we have, of course, the standard ride deck with cherries and lattice, where you can kind of like superior call the top deck. However, you can only superior call grade 2 and below, so do keep that in mind. If you check into a grade 3 or an order, it's gonna go to the drop zone. So it's a little bit on the RNG side, but then it's still free. Quite free except for lattice, since you need to Soul Blast 1. However, a alternative option for this ride deck is actually using the Zorga ride line. With this Zorga ride line, you are able to draw 2 more cards in exchange for 1 order card being thrown, either a blitz order or a normal order. Doesn't really matter. So it means you have quite a bit of chances to get your combo pieces as well as returning 1 order card from the drop zone for the cost of the grade 1. With this, you're not gonna rush as much, but you do gain a significant hand size. So do keep that in mind because since this ride line does not really restrict to Zorga himself, so you can actually put this in and try it out. It actually works and it's really good. We have quite a few of main attackers for Magnolia since the deck focused so much on the offense. So the first one we have is, of course, Charis himself. Charis is at least an 18k, meaning that your opponent will have to throw a 10k shield just to guard him. And let me tell you, 10k shield is very hard to throw, because essentially you're taking away 2 cards, unless of course you have cards like Broody that actually gains a 5k shield. Although this unit does function a little less in terms of attacking if your opponent does get a damage trigger, but then hey, it's still a 13k booster, so one of your attacks is gonna have a 13k boosted, so it's actually all good. The next one, of course, we have is Lattice. Lattice himself is gonna hit for 25k with a cost of 1 soul. Now, the problem with this is that you really need to time on when you're gonna activate Lattice skill, because 1 soul, you're not getting back that 1 soul. There's no soul charging effect. I mean, not really. You don't really have a lot. So do keep that in mind. He is going to be a very decent attacker by attacking for 25k. So even if your opponent gets a damage trigger, Lattice is still able to hit, even though it's just a 5k shield. But 5k shield, it's really hard to throw out these days. The next one is Duger. Now Duger is really good in terms of offense and defense as well, because although he do need another 4 other rear guards to get the 5k. If you call a full field and both of your front row is Duger, they're gonna be at 15k base, which means they are less likely to be attacked by your opponent. The 5k also works when he's at the back, so basically this unit will be a 25k in the front if you personal ride, and he's gonna be a 20k at the back, including Magnolia's effect. Overall quite nice, but it's just depending on how you set up your board, as well as how do you strategize on giving what unit the Magnolia skill, and which unit should be in the front and which unit should be at the back. So yeah, the attack pattern is very important for Magnolia to function really good as a deck. Next we have, of course, Gunnosla, the beer. I'm gonna go with beer. A bear and a deer. Now Gunnosla is actually quite a excellent attacker because he can transfer his own power gain to another unit. Like for example, if you get a overtrigger and you give Gunnosla the 100 million power, you can actually give another unit that 100 million power for the cost of one counterblast. But do keep in mind, you can only activate his skill when he's at the back row rear guard. Overall, he's really disgusting if you have a lot of counterblast to use and you have multiple Gunnosla at the back. Next, all the way from Festival Collection, we have Corsi. Now Corsi, as you have noticed, there's no shield value, and he himself is a 15k base rear guard. And he has only one skill where he can only be called at the center back row of your rear guard. So basically behind the Vanguard. So this card is gonna hit for 20k, but then hey, without any boosting, he's gonna hit for 20k. Although there's no shield value, this card is still gonna hit for pretty nice numbers. I mean, as compared to Lattice is gonna hit for 25k, and this is gonna hit for 20k without any cost needed. So, but then you most likely you will just run 1 or 2 piece of this dog. And what's more, this can be a really good boosting unit for Magnolia if you do decided to boost with him. So yeah, Magnolia will be hitting for 28k. Nice. Next is another one from Festival Collection, Hydro Rail Dragon. This one is there just to kind of like bait your opponent into guarding this card to get either himself or another Magnolia from the drop zone if you do have them. You can basically force your opponent to kind of guard these two if your opponent do not want you to get a confirm personal right the next turn. Or you can actually give all the power to this unit and forced out a perfect guard. Next is utility support. The first one we have is Alinea. Alinea is how do I say this? Alinea is a combination of a Neo Nectar looking unit with a Grand Blue unit skill. What she does is basically if you call her and you counterblast 1 and soul blast 1, you're able to call something from the drop zone, a grade 2 and below, and call it out, and that unit will plus 5k. So this unit is quite nice if you are facing a deck that focuses on retiring, but then she's gonna cost you 1 counterblast and 1 soul. It's a little bit heavy on the resource side, but then an option is an option. Next one we have is of course this other card, Spiritual Body Condensation. This one is basically the same thing as Alinea, where you only pay 1 soul blast to revive something from the drop zone to call, and give that revive unit plus 5k power. The only difference between this and Alinea is that you will not get 2 rear guards instead of like just the 1, because it's an order card, it's not really a unit. But then in terms of a emergency, this card is actually quite good, and the 5k power is actually quite needed to kind of prevent from your offensive center being watered down by a damage trigger. Next is offensive support. The first card we have is of course Adamantus. Adamantus by appearing on the field gives another unit plus 5k. I mean, giving another unit plus 5k is godly in this deck because every power actually counts, and since most of your stuff are gonna hit for magic numbers, so this unit is very much needed. If you call this unit from the drop zone, you're still able to give another unit plus 5k, so very nice, and it helps set up your whole offensive turn and make it even more deadlier. Next is something similar, Silverhorn Beast Aglio. The only difference between this card and Adamantus is that he needs to kind of retire himself to choose 2 units to plus 5k. It's quite similar to Adamantus, however, you're basically sacrificing 1 rearguard for 2 units to plus 5k. I mean, it's not bad, just that you're gonna eat up one of your units. I mean, unless you have abundance of hand or you can basically revive something from the drop zone, is only when you should use this card. So I mean, yeah, it's good. It's really good for this card, but then I would actually prefer Adamantis over this card. For defensive support, we have quite a few. So the first one we have is, of course, the Blitz Order, Ghost Chase. This card is basically a 5k shield with the ability to actually return something from the rearguard that was not being attacked to the hand. You can call this out for a 5k shield and return that particular overtrigger or trigger or perfect guard to your hand to be used the next one. So whatever is in your board, it has the ability to actually reuse them, which is actually very nice. And not to mention, you can keep on reviving the overtrigger and get the overtrigger back using this card, provided if you get it, that is. For trigger lineup, we have, of course, the quite a standard lineup where you have 7 crits and 4 draw. For the overtrigger, you can either run the starter deck overtrigger or the Stoicheia's very own overtrigger. Both of these work, but since you're focusing on mostly offense, the starter deck can give you a devastating result. And that is all for this video. Do let me know down in the comment section, what do you think of the Ice Cream Fox himself? Do you like the multi-attacking aspect of Magnolia? Or do you actually prefer the old Great Nature mechanic where you retire your own rearguard to keep on drawing? Do like and subscribe if you like this video, and do remember to ring the bell notification icon. With that being said, I'll see you all on the field.